What's up, book nerds? My name is Tara, and today I want to talk about reading ladders and BookTube. The other day, I got an email from an 8th grade girl who was looking to get some recommendations from me for books that she could read because she was getting a little bit tired of young adult literature and was ready to branch out. And this is a trend that I see happening a lot, especially in just the teenagers and even adults that I observe around me, where they get tired of what they're currently reading and are ready to branch out and read more complex texts than they have been previously reading. This is a natural stage in reading development, and it happens at different places for all readers. So while we see it very naturally happening around ages 17 and 18 for some readers, it's not just happening there. It's something that's very slowly progressing and happening throughout our entire lives. We may not notice it. We tend to notice it more at that shift from high school to college, but it's always going on. So this made me think about a great YA lit researcher named Terry Lessine, and I think I'm pronouncing the name right, who theorized this concept of the reading ladder. And this is an article that I read with my YA lit students when I taught YA literature, but I thought it might be of interest to the broader sort of YouTube audience, because I think this is something that we as bloggers and vloggers have observed across our time in this space. Reading ladders are theorized as the literary rungs that we progress through on our way to more complex texts. And the idea of the ladder is a completely crucial one here because it's not giant leaps. We're not going from Goosebumps to War and Peace. We are moving slowly from rung to rung as we, maybe even within a single genre or a very specific set of tastes, are reading and desiring more complex things as time goes on. It's also important to note that it's not an escalator or an elevator, it's a ladder, which implies that there is some sort of effort involved on the behalf of the person who's making the move. They have to lift their legs and they have to want to go up. So going from Goosebumps to War and Peace would be like making a giant leap from the third rung up to the top of the ladder, and you would probably fall off if that happened. Instead, each rung on the ladder is a more comfortable, reasonable step up. That's why we have ladders and stairs, because they're designed to be what's reasonable for a human to move through. So as educators, we are taught how to move kids up that ladder in a developmentally appropriate way. The Reading Ladders book actually shows how to move a kid up based on a specific book or author or genre or theme or topic or anything that they might be interested in. So for example, like the Goosebumps book that I used, you would start the kid out, letting them read the Goosebumps, and then maybe suggesting Lois Duncan, and then Stephen King, maybe Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and then up to Edgar Allan Poe. So another example of a reading ladder would be one that moves a student from thinking about their own personal experiences to expanding their worldview to include experiences of people who are not like them. So you might start, like me as a kid, with Judy Blume's books, maybe move them to the works of Laurie Halse Anderson. Then they would move on to Eleanor and Park, Bombay Blues, Stone Butch Blues, then maybe the works of Bell Hooks. So you're keeping again with some similar themes, but we're moving to diverse experiences and diverse protagonists and diverse authorship. So there's really an infinite number of possibilities of ways that you can construct these ladders. There's no right or wrong way, but they are just one way of thinking about how people make that progression. However, what I really love about being in the BookTube community is watching BookTubers and even just bloggers in the blogging community as they move through these reading ladders. And I see it a lot in young people. And this is one of the things that I hope to touch on more in my dissertation research, because I've noticed a lot of YouTubers who I've watched for many years, who have videos going back many years, they are now trying to kind of go into the adult popular fiction, the Gone Girl, the Girl on the Train, even some of the graphic novels that are intended for the adult audience. Ready Player One, All the Light We Cannot See. I mean, I see it happens in different ways with different booktubers, but it definitely is happening. I also see an appreciation of a lot of the canonical texts, and the works of George Orwell show up a lot in these videos. So the shift is happening, and what's really interesting to me is that it's happening in BookTube and not always as a result of exposure to English classes. So in that way, I think that BookTube serves as a really important catalyst in expanding people's reading horizons, which is something that we talk about all the time, but I'm really noticing in very specific and tangible ways. So it's the idea that this community all comes together and we get exposure and we talk and we have conversations, and that inspires people to make that jump, that one step up the ladder that they need to take. And then over years and years of YouTube, you can watch people really moving 2 or 3 rungs, which is a lot for such a short amount of time. And also, some people may have more of an inverted reading ladder, which I think is another fascinating phenomenon for people that come in reading only high literary and classical texts. Sometimes the reading ladder goes down a little bit to say, hey, there might be some value in Harry Potter or the Hunger Games, and that I can analyze these in a really rich and literary complex way because there's something in every book that can be worth looking at under that lens. So I have to check my ideology a little bit here, because the very idea of calling something a reading ladder and theorizing a reading ladder implies that some texts are more complex or advanced than others, when in reality, like I said, Harry Potter can become an extremely complex text when analyzed under certain lenses. So the complexity of a text is definitely a social construct, and it will differ from person to person. I think reading ladders are an interesting concept because they remind us that our reading tastes are not static, and nor should they be. They're constantly changing. Sometimes we go down the ladder, sometimes we jump up a couple of rungs and give it a try, and sometimes we step off of the ladder completely, as I have been known to do, and that's okay. It's not the only way to describe how and why people read what they read, but it's certainly a way that gives a language to some of the things that I'm seeing when I watch a booktuber take a jump towards a text that they might not have ordinarily read and is out of his or her comfort zone. But it's also something that I think about whenever the conversation comes up about how, like, some booktubers only read YA or some booktubers never read YA, and how that's not always the thing that I'm seeing. I think that we certainly all can read more diversely and read more complexly. So, like, to wrap up this little discussion, I'm just curious to know, like, what you guys think about all of this, if you've seen yourself moving up through reading ladders over time, or if you think that you've observed similar things in the booktube community, or if you think that I'm very wrong and that I'm being way too optimistic about people's reading tastes, and that you kind of notice the opposite in booktube, because I've kind of heard both sides in conversations. And if nothing else, just leave me a comment letting me know which book is next up on your reading ladder, because I know I've challenged myself with a lot of texts this semester, including Judith Butler's Gender Trouble, which has always been a difficult one for me, and I enjoy pushing myself to move up that reading ladder at any given opportunity. Also, if you're interested in formalizing your commitment to reading harder and reading up higher on that reading ladder, you can try out the Book Riot Read Harder Challenge, which is sort of it's a year-long reading challenge where there's different tasks, such as read a book by an author of a gender that's not your own and things like that. So that could be a good way to force yourself to step outside of your comfort zone a little bit. So I've linked that information below, and as always, book nerds, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.